So the NBA season is upon us, and as I do on Sundays, or at the very least have started, we are going to be talking about teams that are not the Utah Jazz, but are also interesting stories around the league just to keep us in touch with everybody else and what else is going on around the globe. With that being said, today we are talking about the one and only Oklahoma City Thunder, who have not been getting, the shine that I believe they are personally deserving of. And while I understand teams like the Celtics or the 76ers or the Clippers have, different stories going on, and now the Lakers, of course, I think that Oklahoma City deserves a little bit more praise for what they did in the offseason and also what I expect them to do this season and the seasons to come. With that being said, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. If you're new to the channel, go and smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and cover the Oklahoma City Thunder. So at the time of this video dropping, they will have been starting the season 2-0 for this 2024-2025 year, with their first two games going against the Chicago Bulls and the Denver Nuggets, winning against the Nuggets 102-87, which was an impressive feat in and of itself, and then of course beating the Chicago Bulls 114-95. Obviously, the two areas that were the glaring weaknesses in the playoffs, particularly last season, while you could say they were pretty solid perimeterly from the defensive standpoint, they could afford to add a little bit more depth there, and so they thought that they should. They also needed better perimeter shooting, and so they went out and they got that too. And that came in a trade, ironically enough, with the Chicago Bulls that they just beat in the form of one Alex Caruso. They also had an issue with rebounding, considering the fact that Chet Holmgren isn't necessarily the most sizable of players to put at the 5 spot, and he can be outmuscled against certain competition. And so they decided, you know what, we're going to go out and fix that as well. And so in free agency, they signed Isaiah Hartenstein. But the more impressive fact of the gathering of those two pieces to this roster was the fact that it cost them almost nothing. Because sure, of course, Isaiah Hartenstein costed money, but outside of that, when you look at the trade that ended up bringing the one and only Alex Caruso to them from the Chicago Bulls, they only had to give up Josh Giddey. And when you look at the playoff series that were played with Josh Giddey at the helm, it makes sense why they ended up making the trade that they ended up making. And the fact that it was able to be a 1-for-1 is by far one of the most mind-boggling things even to this moment, even though at the current state of the Chicago Bulls, they are making Josh Giddey work pretty well. I believe he had around 17, 7, and 6 in their last outing. But they said because he has all-star potential, they should 1-for-1 trade. And in my mind, if you're going to trade with the Oklahoma City Thunder, regardless of what team you are, you should try and tap a little bit of their draft assets because they have the most picks through 2030. But that didn't happen, and Chicago just ended up going 1-for-1. Now, it may be 2-3 years down the line, we say, okay, this was a pretty even trade. But at the moment, I think Alex Caruso ended up getting the best placement out of the two of them because obviously Chicago is not 100% healthy, while Lonzo Ball is slated to come back and look really, really good. In the preseason, he got a couple minutes, but he didn't play in their most recent game. I believe that from the immediate future, we're going to see more from Alex Caruso on his team and his impact, even though he is in the latter half of his NBA career, I believe being 31 years old right now. He has been a phenomenal shooter from the field. Obviously, last year, to put some numbers into perspective, shot 47% from the field and 41% from three-point range on a career-high 4.5 attempts per game. So you effectively traded away somebody who couldn't shoot in the playoffs and was struggling defensively, despite his, more positive size, and traded for somebody that's going to help your perimeter rotation and shoot well off the catch. One of the best shooters in the league last year from beyond the arc, as a matter of fact. Then you also went out and you signed Isaiah Hartenstein to take off some of the load that was being dealt to Chet Holmgren from a rebounding standpoint and allow him to flourish both defensively and offensively with that switchability and that ability to get his shot off against almost anybody that ends up being his defensive matchup. Like I said, they're starting the season out 2-0, and I have reason to believe that against the Atlanta Hawks they will continue, though the Hawks have shown some surprising promise over this beginning stretch of games. And the number one reason for this, in my opinion, is going to be Chet Holmgren. We already know who Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is. We already know he's an MVP caliber player on any given night. But Chet Holmgren, over the first two games, of course, small sample size, nevertheless, 23 points and 15 rebounds on average. right? And remember, we added Isaiah Hartenstein to that roster in order to alleviate some of the requirements for him to rebound. And yet he's still rebounding at an even more effective rate than he did last year. And he's shooting 52.8% from the field, which is honestly extremely impressive. But again, it's only a 2-game sample size, so we can't get too far ahead of ourselves. But if this is anything to lean on as far as implications for the future, I believe that this team is in even better waters than most people are even giving them credit for. And yes, I understand that the Boston Celtics ended up playing the New York Knicks and they ended up blowing them out despite allowing the New York Knicks to basically hit, I believe it was like some crazy 65 or 70% from the field on all of their shots, but they still ended up being able to blow them out because of their offensive efficiency and the chemistry that they have between their players. I believe that on the Western Conference side of things, yes, you have some other teams that are going to vie for the championship. Yes, you're going to have the retooled and more impressive Mavericks. Even though they ended up losing Derrick Jones Jr., they added Klay Thompson in his first game. He reminded everybody, hey, I can shoot. I'm still like that. And then you have other teams that are going to be coming out of the woodworks trying to prove that they are deserving of being able to stand on the stage. You have the Timberwolves. They ended up making that trade that sent Karl-Anthony Towns to New York and ended up taking on Julius Randle, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and seeing the developments that Anthony Edwards ends up making from a playmaking standpoint to see if they can end up going further in the playoffs. The Clippers will be more Kawhi-less than ever before, and then you have the Golden State Warriors looking surprisingly proficient with the addition of Buddy Hield in his limited minutes. So I would hesitate to say that the Oklahoma City Thunders are guaranteed locks for the finals because I can't say that when the other teams are just so proficient. You have the Lakers coming out with a bursting 3-0 start, taking the next steps. You have LeBron still being able to give you a 30-point triple-double. You have Anthony Davis in the opening night showing everybody, hey, I'm not going to lie, I'm ready to go. I'm healthier than ever. Last year was healthy. I'm going to repeat this year. And then with actual plays that are being run by a rookie head coach, things are looking really good over there. But nevertheless, we have to look at the now, the future, and the honestly future, because not only are we talking about an Oklahoma City Thunder team that is young, we're talking about a team that also has solid experience, a team that has an MVP caliber point guard. They have other players that will be at the all-star caliber play level, if not all NBA defensive and offensive honors. And then they have a treasure trove of draft picks as well to keep fueling this engine for years to come. They're going at an alarming rate. They're winning games. I believe that they will continue to win games. If they won less than 65 games this season, I would be honestly surprised. And I know that is extremely high praise for them. But at the same time, if we're talking about this team winning 57, 58 games, I would say that is an understatement. I would say they underachieved for the regular season. And I understand the postseason is the most important thing. You want to make sure you're the first seed, the second seed, the third seed, which they were in the mix last year, obviously being tied for the first seed. I believe they ended up winning out over the Denver Nuggets, even though they both had the same. They ended up having the tiebreaker or whatever the case may have been. But they ended up falling short early on in the playoffs. So we didn't get to see what the peak of them would have looked like. But that also showed us, hey, they need help rebounding. Hey, they need to be able to have guys on the floor that will hit their shots. You can't have Josh Giddey going out there and shooting almost 15% from three and saying, oh, you know what? We're okay. Because that wasn't the case. And adding Isaiah Hartenstein, Alex Caruso, taking the next year of J-Dub and the rest of those boys, seeing Chet in year 2, or I guess year 3 if you want to count the development year where he just wasn't able to play the entire year, things are looking really, really freaking nice. And it's hard to sit there and bet against them when they have this treasure trove of talent right here, but also sitting there and saying, in 3 years, let's say they don't have a great outing this year. You don't have to blow anything up. Next year, you don't have to blow anything up. At some point in these next 4 or 5 years, you're going to see the finals 2, 3, maybe even 4 times, depending on how things shake out, because you have Jokic in his 30s. You have Jamal Murray, and people think that his leg is blown out. I wouldn't necessarily go that it's out of proportions like everybody is saying it is. You have an aging Stephen Curry. You have an aging LeBron James. You have all these other teams across the Western Conference where, yes, they're really good, but they're also a lot older from a cumulative age standpoint than the Oklahoma City Thunder. And now we have these guys that are not even necessarily in their primes yet, and they're already this darn good. They're already top of the Western Conference, top of the most competitive conference in the NBA level good, and they just keep ascending and getting better. So from that standpoint, I would say that the Oklahoma City Thunder are the team that deserves the most praise, bar obviously, we have the media circus, and in some ways justifiably so with Los Angeles. as it is the big market team that it is, but also they believe they deserve to be on par with the New York Knicks. They deserve to be on par with the Boston Celtics. And I know that's extremely high praise. And they are young. But even 2, 3, 4 years ago, back when LeBron was with the Cleveland Cavaliers and we were looking at a young Jason Tatum and a young Jaylen Brown, we were saying, these guys are due for a championship at some point soon. They finally put together the chemistry, finally have all their ducks in a row, and finally got that chip after going to the finals repetitively and going to the conference finals repetitively. So now I think it's Oklahoma City Thunder's turn. And last year I was a little bit up in the air. Yes, I knew they were a young team. Yes, I knew that they were capable, but I didn't necessarily want to buy in. And when I saw Shai Gilgeous-Alexander be a borderline MVP, arguable #1 winner, it really put it into context for me alongside the improvements and the showings of who Chet Holmgren really could be over the entirety of a NBA season, along with J-Dub and all the rest of the boys, to understand that this is a team that is not to be played with. And despite them being young and in some ways inexperienced, they are built to last, not just for their careers, but also for players that will end up coming into the organization in years to come. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. As always, I'm interested to hear what you have to say. Do you think that the Oklahoma City Thunder will at the very least make the conference finals this year if you don't believe they'll make the finals? And if you don't say that they're the favorite to come out of the West, who do you have coming out of the West? And in the next coming years, do you think that they will get even better? And what does even better look like? But that's enough questions for one video. If you made it this far, I appreciate you guys. Even if you're not a Utah Jazz fan, if you're an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, or if you just like NBA content in general, go ahead and smash that like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications. Drop a donation or become a member to help support the content. As always, it's your boy Wraith Hoops. Good morning, good evening, and good night, no matter where you're in the globe watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.